Hello everyone, welcome to the March 27th Call of Duty DFS Slate breakdown. One little housekeeping thing before we get started with the games, and that's quickly I wanted to touch on a comment I had yesterday letting me know that I need to be giving credit to whoever is curating the prize picks spreadsheet that we use for the map vetoes and stuff. I definitely agree and would love to be able to give out the credit and all that stuff, and more than fine with that. So if anybody does have info on who runs that spreadsheet or maybe where I could find that info out, I would love that. I definitely don't want to be, stealing anybody's content or anything like that. That's the last thing I would like to do. So for now, we're not going to be using that spreadsheet just because of the kind of question marks there. I don't want to be stepping on anybody's toes. I don't want to, again, kind of be stealing anybody's content here. I kind of just want to I just thought it was a great way to get all the information out there, make it clear for everyone and that kind of stuff. So, I guess for now we'll be without that. So we'll be a little bit on our own for foreseeable future. So hopefully at some point this week I could figure that stuff out and be back on, getting that stuff going. So recap of yesterday, we actually had a kind of a 4-0 clean sweep day. Obviously, liked Seattle a lot against LA Thieves. They got the job done there. Pretty pleased with that. We did end up on the Boston side. They got the 3-0 sweep over Florida. I was a little surprised that it was so one-sided, but at the same time, I think kind of the better team won, so it's not too big of a deal. Optic got the 3-0. They were a gigantic favorite anyway, and then also LAG did have a player sick. Gunless was kind of like a last-minute ruled out, so they had to bring in one of their challengers players, which was Spart. Obviously, just a really tough situation for them. LAG actually did kind of put up a little bit of a fight, but it was still just kind of too one-sided there. So yeah, it was just tough for them. And then New York got the 3-1 over Minnesota. New York control was still looking a little questionable, but I think they're actually looking a lot stronger in a lot of different areas. So pretty excited for them, and they're going to be one we talk about tomorrow. So quickly, I have been looking around and kind of getting prepared for tomorrow's slate a little already. Just trying to get everything in a row beforehand. I figured that would be one way to kind of speed up the process of these videos, is if I'm prepared beforehand. I used to just kind of want to record these videos of me kind of just doing what I would be doing anyway and uploading it anyway so that people can use it that way. But I want to try to keep these videos a little shorter for everyone. So I kind of did all my research and stuff beforehand. So far, honestly, the only confident spot I have is actually with New York versus Toronto. I think overall, I've just liked a lot what I saw from New York. Again, I don't think they're going to get up against the highest level of competition by any means. Paris and Minnesota, they're not very good teams. Definitely a lot to be desired there. But I think overall, just kind of individually and some of the moves and just a lot of the stuff I've seen from these New York players, they seem a lot more comfortable, a lot better. I've just been kind of impressed with a lot of them individually. I think there's kind of a whole new aura or vibe to this team now. I'm pretty impressed with them overall. Again, them having a really weak control does concern me. But I mean, you only play one control, you play 2 hard points, 2 searches, so I think they should be relatively fine. I think this price is pretty disrespectful, plus 158 for them as the underdog here versus Toronto. If you go map by map, it does look a little bit better and make more sense, but I mean, Toronto's a really big favorite in the Surge and Destroys and the controls, which does make sense. That is the type of team that they are. But I just think it's a lot closer, more specifically in those Surge and Destroys. I think overall New York have a pretty solid chance to win this series. I like them a lot. I like them a lot more in the hard points, and that matters, of course, a lot more for the DFS aspect. When it comes down to the Bocage watch and looking, excuse me, my voice is kind of going a little. When it comes to the Bocage watch, and what we're looking for in that, I think we have a pretty likely Bocage coming out here. Again, I think Toronto are definitely wanting to be able to get on the Bocage. That's kind of the only map they've had success on at all, kind of over the last like last qualifiers and this one. But I think New York are definitely fine going on there as well, so that would be expected. Toronto's actually been banning Berlin a lot, and I think that'll be what their ban will be here against New York. So New York is with this roster, they're 2-0 on Berlin, 2-0 on Bocage, and Toronto's usually banning Berlin anyway, so it would make sense for them to ban the Berlin. And then for the New York ban, they had been banning Tuscan, so that's what they've banned the past couple series with this new look roster. So I'd expect the bans to be Berlin and Tuscan. I think we're going to get a Bocage hardpoint and a Kavutu hardpoint. For the control, I'm not sure, but I think either way it goes pretty heavily towards Toronto. I do think kind of the caveat here that is a little bit of a plus for us in DFS is although Toronto are more likely going to win the control, they actually kind of don't slay that hard. So I think New York can kind of sustain their kind of DraftKings scoring, keep it up a little bit in the control, just kind of hopefully sustain a little bit there in the control, and should be able to hopefully build out some points in the hard points. That's kind of what I'm looking forward to. It's kind of the game plan here. So this is the first series. Oh, it's not. Sorry, it's actually the last series. So we're going to have to take a guess here. I think my stance is I think they will go to the Bocage and the Kavutu. I just think Toronto's been banning Berlin. Makes a lot of sense. New York have been banning Tuscan. It makes a lot of sense. I think they'll try to go to the cage. Both of these teams will be fine going with the Bocage. And then I think Kavutu will probably lean towards the Toronto side a little bit. But either way, I'm kind of fine with that. I think New York's slaying ability is a lot stronger. I think they've kind of complete opposite, flipped the script of what they were earlier in the year. New York used to be a really solid team that had like close games and was like close to winning a lot, but they got outslayed really heavily. Their numbers were really poor. I think they're kind of the complete opposite now. They actually have some close games, but they're outslaying their opponents pretty hard, and that's kind of what we're aiming for, of course, when it comes to the DraftKings scoring and stuff. So that's my edge. I'm going with New York. I like them a good bit. Looking at individual players, it's really tough to guess who to kind of go with because it's kind of been everyone. I would say number one so far has been Neptune, and then it's probably Hydra. He's a little bit more consistent. I think his upside is also incredible. After that, I think it's definitely you want Neptune and Hydra. Those would be the two I'd want for sure. As far as deciding like a third man in, if you do want to do with like a bigger stack, because there is Bocage potential, I do think getting like a 3-man stack in does make sense here. Between Pollux and Crimsix, this is pretty tough, but I'd slightly lean towards Crimsix. I think the consistency Crimsix has had is a little bit better. Pollux did have a really good spike performance yesterday, but he's had like one bad series and one good series. And Crimsix has had 2 decent series. So I think overall the consistency that lies with Crimsix is a little bit better. I just kind of trust that he'll do decent a little bit more often. So as for the third man in, I think Crimsix is fine. But looking at pricing, Pollux is actually $800 cheaper for DraftKings pricing. So if the $800 is like a difference maker in your lineup, you can go down to Pollux at 66. I think he makes a lot of sense. He's definitely fine there. But if I have the money, I'd try to get up to Crimsix maybe. But if you land at this price tag and you want to get in Pollux instead, again, I think that's more than fine. I started with that series because that's the one I'm like more so confident in. Somehow the biggest underdog on the slate is the team I'm the most confident in. Don't know how we got here, but then the first series I guess is London versus Boston. This one actually I think has super predictable. Wonder if does this tell you anything? No, I was curious. This one I think again has super predictable picks and bans here, but it really doesn't make it any easier. So we know London always banned the Bocage. Sorry, excuse me. I had to sneeze there. So yeah, we know London banned the Bocage. I would expect Boston to ban the Tuscan. I think that's what they've been banning. It would make sense. They're yet to play it so far in this like winning streak here. So I think yeah, we're getting rid of Bocage and Tuscan, those two good maps that do bring DFS goodness in. So that does suck a little. We're gonna get the Berlin and the Gavutu. Those are pretty bad when it comes to DraftKings scoring. It is a three gamer, so I don't necessarily love fading a series, but if there was one to fade, this one probably would be the one. I think it's extremely close. I think Boston has a slight edge in these hard points, but London have the edge in the control, which can kind of nullify those hard points. Um, Again, a lot of it comes down to these maps. These maps are really brutal for DraftKings scoring. Bocage, obviously, we know is number one. Tuscan is number two. And there's probably like a good gap between those. And then it's Berlin and Gavutu. We just have not seen great scoring on Berlin and Gavutu from these players and then stuff. So my slight lean is Boston, but I honestly might just end up leaving this series alone altogether. The big thing here, I guess, actually is that Boston is still pretty underpriced. Methods at 72, TJ Halley at 6,000. Like those are definitely affordable guys to get in. I think they're fine. I don't know. This is a super tough series. I think this is going to be a really good litmus test for a lot of these series. Kind of looking as quickly at the slate as a whole, like London versus Boston. I think these are two really close, like kind of teams that are like on the outside looking in, and then we have the two teams that are in there, which is Atlanta and Texas, number 1 and 2. I think you could argue that these are the top four teams playing today. London versus Boston, Atlanta, Texas. Based on recent form, at least they are top four. Boston, Optic, Atlanta, London. So, I'm excited for that. I do think it is 3 versus 4 and 1 versus 2 with London versus Boston and Atlanta versus Texas. And then oddly enough, somehow the game I'm most confident in is New York versus Toronto. I think I'm excited to see where this new New York team continues to stack up against everyone else. I'm excited for it, and for that reason, I'm just really unsure what to do with these other two series because we have 3 versus 4, I think, London being 3, Boston being 4. I could see this one going either way. The kind of like concerns and stuff that I'm having here is that Boston's been on a really nice streak, and I do think confidence in that stuff matters a lot. And that's kind of why I'm slightly leaning towards them. But at the same time, they've beaten Florida, Toronto, Minnesota, and Seattle. I don't rate Toronto or Minnesota highly at all. I think Seattle and Florida are decent. They did look good against both of those teams, but that was like Seattle's so wildly inconsistent. We really just don't know. They did beat up on Florida pretty bad, so that does give me a little bit of confidence. But Florida, I think, is still not a great team really. But on the flip side, like for London, we also don't really have that much in terms of like where they are standing at the moment because they lost to FaZe, so we know they're worse than the second best team. Then they've beaten Paris, who was obviously bottom 2, LA Thieves, who was like bottom 2, like they're 0-5. Then they went against New York, and that was when New York was really bad. So they beaten 3 bottom 2 teams, as crazy as it sounds. Like they've beaten 3 really, really bad teams, and they didn't even do those necessarily convincingly. That's kind of what it comes down to here for me is, like, all the momentum feels like it's on the Boston side. The kind of slight caveat here, or like slight hesitation I have, is that London hasn't played for 8 days. Because I do have some slight concerns that, like, obviously they did lose Gizmo for the first week. He was out visiting his family, I think, in the UK. He returned week 2. They didn't necessarily look great then, but they have like another 8 days to kind of get everything refigured there, retooled there. Hopefully they kind of figured everything out. It's just like, we just don't know what version of these teams we're going to get. Like, is Boston actually that good? I feel like they haven't beaten anyone. Is London really not that good? Like, they've barely beaten the bad teams. But we know, like, long-term form, London is better. We know short-term form, Boston is better. So it's like, what is going to prevail here? I do feel more inclined to go towards the Boston side because I do think overall, when it does come to these esports games and stuff, I like to lean towards the short-term form and more looking at more so recent stuff. because it is such an emotional game, or like the esports specifically, like they're so emotional, and that stuff matters so much. But I could just as easily see London thwart this Boston team and kind of remind us that this London team was actually like a contender not too long ago. It just feels almost a little preemptive to kind of put Boston up in this category. But when you look at the games that they're playing and stuff, when you look at the context of all this stuff, you would just kind of have to lean towards London almost, or towards Boston, because they've been beating everyone, doing it in a relatively decisive fashion. Um, and they have like a good spread of maps too. That's just kind of like what it comes down to here. Like they're gonna have Berlin and Gavutu. Like London hasn't done anything on Berlin. Boston's 3-0 on Gavutu. London is probably the favorite in the control, but I think Boston's been on the up and up in the control. Their stats feel a little disingenuous because of the like more recent control update, which favors more so the objectives as opposed to the kills. So it definitely feels like a boost to Boston, but it could definitely hurt their DFS side, which is concerning. So I don't know. I'm extremely torn on this series. I think overall, if you just want to like go lighter on it and only get in some of this value, I think Methods, Afro, and TJ Halley are all pretty decent value. Even Zero, maybe he's been playing pretty well. Um, if you want to spend up to cap, I think maybe that's fine. I'm really unsure what to do with this series. Um, I don't know. It's like my heart's telling me London, they're the better team overall. Um, they have long-term form. They're just a better team. They're probably more like a contending team. And Boston, although they've been playing really well, like, are they that good? I just don't know. It'll be a good litmus test for sure, but predicting it is pretty tough. Um, I think the kind of deciding factor here for me is probably going to be ownership. I really have no idea what people are going to go to. My guess would people would probably continue to ride Boston. I think Methods and Tej are too underpriced. People are probably going to get to Boston pretty heavily. Um, so I might just go London. I might just load up on some of those guys I was talking about earlier. Afro, maybe Zero. Um, could maybe even get to somebody like Nasty and Gizmo. I'm not sure. Nasty's been pretty poor, but maybe Gizmo, some Afro, some Zero, maybe. I really just don't know. We will see the maps for this series, but I don't expect much anyway. Um, London have been talking about breaking out the bocage, so if they do, we'll keep an eye out for it. I don't expect it. I don't know. I really just don't know. I really don't know. This one's super tough. Coin flip. Man, I don't know. Like I've spent the last like hour or two just kind of mulling over these series because I really don't have a lean. I think I'm gonna pick a theme here, and I'm gonna go with London. I don't love eating the like small chalk here, but I think overall when we look at long term form and we look at more specifically when we look at like this control, if I think the hard points are close, but I think London has a good edge in the control, then I think the more the upside is with London. I think if London do win like two or three of these respawns, they're going to be much better off. I just think overall long term form, London's more of like a contender. Boston hasn't gotten there yet. I'll go with London for now. When you're looking at names, I think it's definitely probably I think it's Afro and then probably Zero and then Gizmo, then Nasty. So like just a complete inverse of pricing. I think that's probably what to go with. Just based on how they've been playing, like their stats so far. Um, like Afro and Gizmo have been better in the control. Um, Afro, Zero, and Gizmo have been better in the hard points. So I'd probably say, I guess, Afro and then Gizmo and then Zero. But Nasty would be the one I'd leave off. He's just way too expensive, I think, there. But although I think he does have some upside there as well. Like, I think London could kind of shock us, maybe have like a really decent game. I'll go with London. Slight lean. I think they win the control, they have a good chance to have these hard points close or even winning them. So in that aspect, I'll lean with them there. And yeah, I'll go slightly in London. Texas Atlanta. This one's pretty interesting as well. I'm looking forward to this one a lot. Much like the last series, I mulled over this one for a while. Jeez, my apologies. I feel like I'm coming down with something a little, but um, like this one's super close. So we kind of just talked about this. London versus Boston, I think, is 3 versus 4. Like I think London's the third best team, or Boston is the fourth best team. And then we definitely have 1 versus 2 here with Atlanta versus Optic. This one is super, super tough as well because similar to the last one, we have Optic Texas, who's really strong in the control, decent in hard point, and then we have Atlanta, who's like really strong in hard point but decent in control. I think this one is a little bit more even because Atlanta is that much better in hard point. I think the controls are close. So for that reason, I'm probably just going to go with the FaZe side here. I know it's tough. Like, I don't know. It just feels like you could kind of discount every record here at this point. Like, they both beat Florida. They both played Seattle. Atlanta lost to Seattle, but we know how volatile Seattle is. But, like, Optic went to 5 with LA Thieves, who've looked really bad. They both beat Florida. Seattle's super volatile. They beat LAG, but LAG had a substitute. It's like there's like asterisks on like every one of these series. It feels like this is going to be like a much bigger series overall. One I'm super excited to see. I don't know. I guess it's going to be close. I think both these series are close. I guess quickly I should talk about the maps again here for Bocage Watch. 2022, of course, Bocage Watch. Make sure to look out for Bocage. I think we're going to have some pretty bad maps here as well. So when it comes to Atlanta FaZe, they usually are just banning the Berlin. That's usually the map they don't want to get to. They're pretty strong, I think, and confident on Bocage, Kavutu, and Tuscan. So they're going to be on Berlin. Optic, I think most likely should ban the Bocage as well. That's kind of the only map that they've looked relatively shaky on recently. I just don't see a reason for them to go against one of the better maps of FaZe if they don't need to. I think there's a possibility here. Like, neither team wants to go to Berlin, so one of these teams is going to ban it. I think FaZe will most likely ban Berlin. Optic probably go to the Bocage ban. But if we extend the stats a little, we could see that FaZe are incredible in hardpoint. They're just going to ban the Berlin, and then they're 13-2 on everything else. Optic, we get rid of the Berlin there, then they're really strong in everything. So, like, if we add these stats, you could argue that Optic might want to ban the Kavutu. Then maybe we do get a Bocage Tuscan. I'm not sure. Like, the possibility is there. I'm definitely going to be involved in this series one way or the other because I do think there is Bocage upside there. I just have the feeling that Optic are going to go with the Bocage ban because they did lose to Florida on it, or they lost to Seattle on it. They looked a little shaky on it. I think they're going to feel a little bit more confident in the other maps, but it is a possibility, and I'm not sure. I think they're going to feel confident in their control and search and destroy either way. That's the concern here for me is, like, Optic kind of do have their control to fall back on. I don't know if Atlanta FaZe like win the hard points good like that much by a significant difference where the Optic control like won't matter. It's super tough. I'm super torn on this one as well because, like I just talked about with the London series, we have Optic, who is very strong in control. I think what is their control record now? 8-1. FaZe are 5-4, so you definitely have to favor Optic a lot in the controls, but Atlanta favored them in the hard points, so there's 2 hard points, only 1 control, but then Optic are probably favored to win the search and destroys, so I don't know, this one's tough. For now, I'm just going to put my slight lean on the Atlanta FaZe side. I think they're just better in the hard points. but I don't love it. I really don't. The main thing here is Abizi's been playing pretty poorly lately, and I think if they can have a little bit more performance from him, then they're probably in a much better spot. So I'll go with Atlanta. The players I like, it's probably just going to be Celium and Simp for me. Aristides would probably be the third man in. He is 6,400. That's pretty cheap for Atlanta phase guy. Aristides has been playing a lot better lately. His numbers are actually pretty decent. We are going to get on to some decent AR maps, I think, here. We should be seeing, I think, the Gavutu and the Tuscan, which are pretty strong for, or I guess Gavutu's better for an AR player, but Tuscan's like neutral. There could be a Bocage, so I'm going to have some like phase stacks here just in case. But I think overall, probably just leaning the phase side a little bit. I don't know, like, all right. I don't know. I might have to tweet out some like updates and stuff and try to get some more information on this because I'm so torn on these. It's really like crazy. Um, I don't know. I don't think I've ever remembered a scenario where I look at a slate like this and I think thing I'm confident in the most is the biggest underdog on the slate. Like I love New York a lot, but they're the biggest underdog, so it's like I don't know what to pair them up with. Really, it's kind of the thing. I could see London, Boston going either way. I could see Atlanta, Optic going either way. I think objectively, Boston's recent form and stuff is a little bit better. I, I don't know. Like, I don't. Do I want to overthink it and stuff? That's kind of like the internal battle. I guess I'm kind of having is, um, all right, scratch that. You know what? Just gonna lay it out right here. These are gonna be my picks and stuff. I'm just gonna trust my gut and not try to overthink this. I'm definitely going New York. Like any, no matter what. I definitely kind of lock that in. I love New York a lot. We talked about the players earlier, um, but I'm gonna trust my gut and I'm gonna go with the Boston side, and I'm gonna go with Optic. I know that's kind of counterintuitive to kind of what I just talked about, but I think recent form, we've seen everything trending towards Boston. We've seen again a lot of asterisks and a lot of question marks surrounding where London is at the moment. If London beats us, they're going to beat us. It is what it is. I'm pretty torn on these series, like you guys could already tell that. Um, but I think we'll just ride Boston here a little bit. I think they have a lot of confidence and a lot of great ability at the moment. I love what they're doing. And we just haven't seen much from London. So we just kind of have to trust that we're going to go with the Boston side here a little. It just makes a little bit too much sense for them. And then for Atlanta Optic, although I do have big concerns here with, man, like I just don't want to count out Atlanta phase. That's what it comes down to. I'll go with Optic again, kind of for similar reasons. Like we've just seen a lot more from Optic. They're continuing the 4-0, much like Boston. It's riding a lot of recent form, but they're really strong in control as well. I think this is similar to kind of what it comes down to. I think Optic are much better in control, and I think the hard points are pretty close. So I think if Optic can win a hard point, they're going to most likely win the search and destroys. They're most likely going to win the controls. It just feels like a lot of these things are pointing towards the Optic side, and they can have decent performances as well. Like specifically, Dashy, Shotzi. Those would be. I would probably just leave it at those two. This is a really big series. I don't love a lot else. I mean, Scump at 8 is pretty cheap, but I don't know. It's kind of like I got to use my money somewhere. I think Atlanta's probably going to be pretty popular. I'm not sure. But I feel like I'd like to load up back on Shotzi and Dashy. I think they're going to have a pretty good performance here. They can have a lot of good individual numbers, a lot of things set up well for them. I mean, I like the Boston guys who are cheap. I like the New York guys who are cheap. So I feel comfortable combining them up with the Texas guys. So that'll be it for me today. don't love this slate a lot. I'm looking forward to it as a neutral because I'm excited to see where these teams stack up, but I just have a feeling I'm going to be on the wrong side of one of these two series. Um, and I'm not going to like it. So I'll go with Boston. I'll again like methods, TJ Halley, Capsule, Narrow's probably the one I'm leaving off. Um, on the Texas side, I'm probably just going to limit it to Shotzi and Dashy. Maybe if I were to get a third one in, it would be Scumpy. I might have some three-man Texas stacks in case they do get a Bocage in there somehow. There's a possibility. Toronto, New York. Again, I think all of four of New York are fine, but I would order them with Hydra and Neptune, kind of a cut above the other two. And then it's kind of close between Crim and Paul, but I'll lean towards Crim 6 a little bit. So yeah, that'll be kind of the recap and stuff that I'm looking forward to tomorrow. Again, if you guys have any information on the spreadsheet creator and stuff, let me know. I'd love to get in contact with them and get everything straightened out. That way, there's no controversy or anything. Don't want to step on anybody's toes for sure. So let me know if you knew anything about that, and that'll be it for me today. Best luck to you guys. I'll see you guys next week. We should be in playoffs next week on land in Minnesota. Should be pretty exciting to watch. But we'll be talking about that then, and I'll see you guys then.